Hello everyone and happy Death Stranding 2 launch day or launch week whenever you are watching this. It's fair to say that I'm super hyped for it and I have been really anticipating another Kojima game for a long time. But I thought it'd probably be the best time to talk about this because back in the day I made a Metal Gear Solid video about the socialist politics of Metal Gear Solid as a series. And I actually promised a lot of people I would do a Death Stranding video because this was the week Death Stranding 1 came out. So that is November 2019. I think the 20th of November 2019 because Kojima said he wanted it to come out on the same day Blade Runner was set in. And I never made that video. And I never made that video for a couple reasons. I think just the Metal Gear videos took it out of me a little bit. This was when my channel had under 10k subs. But Hassan watched my Metal Gear video a year ago. I watched it back, and although watching older content, sometimes you're I would change some stuff there. I did think it was really good, and this video actually isn't going to be as good as that because I put so much fucking effort into that. This is me just kind of talking about this because last Monday I actually completed Death Stranding for the second time, and I played the Death Stranding the director's cut, and I really enjoyed my time of it. And it got me thinking once again about the politics of Death Stranding and the left-leaning politics of Death Stranding. Now, it's fair to say the actual politics of Death Stranding are a bit more, I wouldn't call them obscure because the themes are very central, but I would say the politics aren't as much of the point as the Metal Gear Solid games. In terms of the Metal Gear Solid games, we'll have characters go on tangents about actual historical conflicts or about political ideologies for minutes at a time in a very clunky way. And for a lot of these characters, it's clearly Kojima through the characters talking to the audience. So the best example, the one I always use, is how focused Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker is on actual socialism. So it's pretty clear from pictures you've seen that Hideo Kojima loves Che Guevara, and what a lot of people said in response to that video is because you're playing as Big Boss in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, who becomes an antagonist later on in the series, that's actually Kojima saying Che Guevara is actually bad, which is absolutely fucking insane because I don't think he'd have so many pictures with portraits of him or wear him on his shirt if he actually hated him and was trying to make the point in a really bizarre way that he was bad. It's pretty clear the game is trying to show you how good he is because all these characters that you very much identify with and love, they all love him too. And it's teaching you about his life, including when Che Guevara went to Japan and visited Hiroshima.
I was shocked the first time I saw you. You look so much like him.
I look like El Che, huh?
Sort of. Not in the face. It's more the way you carry yourself.
I wonder if Che and his men ever sat around and drank mate.
I bet they did. Che was famous for his love of the stuff.
Oh, man, whoever thought of this was a genius. So I hear Amanda mistook you for Che Guevara, Snake. That's not too bad, huh?
Yeah, right. I'm not even worthy of polishing his boots.
Don't be so modest. From where I'm standing, your men see you as a great man.
As great as the century's most complete human being.
That's Sartre, right? Well, there's hardly been a more iconic figure of his times than Che.
Oh, he was more than that. He was a true revolutionary and a great warrior.
I'm with you there. Can you believe that when he first went to Cuba with Fidel, they had only 12 guys with them?
But they rallied. They brought in new recruits, won the support of the peasants, expanded their organization.
And in the end, they overthrew the Batista regime.
I guess Che's a hero to the Sandinistas, too.
Of course. The FSLN was formed in the spirit of the ideologies championed by El Che and Fidel. El Che was a true revolutionary. He fought and died for the people. He worked harder than anybody, and he was a righteous man. Even as a minister of Cuba, he gave up his weekends to work on the farms and public works.
The year the Cuban Revolution was won, Che visited Japan as a member of an economic delegation. While he was there, he visited Hiroshima. He was quoted as saying, "They put you through this, and still you do whatever America says." Those words really hit me hard, especially when I think of my mom.
So it's pretty clear that Kojima is using this game to tell you about the virtues of Che Guevara at least. And that also extends pretty much to the themes of that game. It is all about American imperialism in Latin America, and you actually ally with explicit socialists in the Sandinista movement, right? So that game is very clearly a socialist game. And then the follow-up to that with Ground Zeroes and MGS5, The Phantom Pain, there's a lot of stuff in there as well. And I would say MGS5's political subtext is so fucking interesting to me. It's basically about how, you know, the English language helped with like colonization and capitalism. And also something I've been thinking about recently, I actually tweeted this, Skullface's ideology about every single country and every militia having a nuclear weapon to ensure peace. Like, I'm not saying I agree with it, but it has become a more interesting conversation with the Iran stuff recently that I've been thinking about. And obviously with Ukraine giving up their nuclear weapons as well, and we've seen what's happened there. It's an interesting conversation that this villain had. He's a villain, but Kojima still does use him to explore these political concepts. And even with like Ground Zeroes, it's about why Guantanamo Bay is like evil and bad, right? Like it is very much like anti-US. And Kojima is a hypocrite in that sense, in that his games are so influenced by the movies he loves, which are American mainly. So he has this both fetishization of the US military while condemning them over and over again. It's very funny. It's like he takes all the aesthetics of the US military that he likes while like utterly condemning US imperialism. Like, I think Kojima at his heart is a political guy, but I think he also just loves what he loves, right? So he can't help himself but include all this shit in his games. And that's why so many people like them. Lots of conservatives like Kojima games because they don't understand or care for the subtext and they like the military action. And a lot of left-wing people, you know, like myself, like the military stuff as well, but also we like the political message. So Metal Gear Solid for Kojima, that is just straight up politics. And I want to make a video one day about Metal Gear Solid 2 because I don't think there's a piece of art in recent history that has aged so well on the topic of AI. Now, of course, AI has just been a popular concept in science fiction for the longest time, but like the way he deals with AI in Metal Gear Solid 2 seems to be the most accurate version of what AI has actually become. So I'd love to make a video on that one day if people are interested. But now let's go on to Death Stranding. If this video gets over 10k views, because I've got very low expectations for this, I will make a follow-up once I've completed Death Stranding 2. But let's talk about Death Stranding because it's completely divorced from the Metal Gear Solid universe. It's like not a follow-up. There's not really many references to it apart from in the director's cut. There is some like Metal Gear inspired missions, but let's lay the foundations for people who clicked on this who might not understand Death Stranding, or for those of you who are confused about Death Stranding, because I had to play it a second time to really get a lot of the world. Because when you play it for the first time, it's immediately overwhelming. So for this section, let's just talk about like the world building, and we'll talk about the politics a bit afterwards. So the Death Stranding world takes place, I think it's like maybe however old Norman Reedus is, let's say like in his 40s, after this massive event that essentially not completely wipes out humanity, but really kills a lot of people. And it's called the Death Stranding, where basically the worlds of the living and the dead collide. Now, we have to understand in the world of Death Stranding, it's basically like the Egyptian afterlife is real, and you have to accept when playing this game, you can't really be an atheist. Like, there is life after death, and basically everyone has something called a beach, which is like where they would go on the way to going to the afterlife, right? So you see this multiple times throughout the game, mainly through your own character, Sam Porter Bridges, played by Norman Reedus. The difference with him, before I spoil anything, is he can't die. So every time he dies, he goes to his beach, but he can't go to the other side. He just comes back to life. So that's his thing. We find out later why that is, but that's what makes him special. And him and Troy Baker's character, Higgs, they have the same sort of thing. They can't die, essentially, unless you die in a very specific set of circumstances. But what happens when you die in the world of Death Stranding is if your body isn't cremated, you blow up and create like a huge explosion, like absolutely massive explosion. And that's what devastated humanity so much to start with, like all these explosions going off that destroyed like whole cities because people would die and then not be cremated quick enough. And that is how the game actually starts, with your character surviving this as the only person who survives it in a whole city because you're the only person in that city who couldn't die, right? It's very, very bizarre, but I thought I'd lay the foundation that Just imagine a world where the Egyptian afterlife was right, but also if you're not cremated when you die, you'll blow up. And what the world of Death Stranding also sees is lots of kind of like spirits who can't move on to the other side, and they're called BTs. And they're the things that might attack you. And there's also rainfall, which ages you. So like if you get it on your skin, you'll age. And there's one character, Fragile, whose body has been exposed, but not her face. So her whole body is that of an old woman. She has her like 30-year-old face and stuff. So there's loads of weird little things like that. But what you have to understand is that, yeah, there has been like some collision between the worlds of the living and the dead, which has created this universe. And because it's so dangerous to go outside, be it from the BTs or the rain, people have started living in these little isolated shelters. And you do have major cities, and the whole game takes place in America, and the US government plays a big role, or a new form of the US government. And your character, Sam Porter Bridges, is basically like a delivery driver. And because you need, I guess, a more human touch in delivery, in that you need people being able to navigate these pretty brutal conditions, a lot of it is just done by these humans called porters, who they, you know, walk around the world, they deliver your stuff, and you can request stuff. Now, that's the like setup before the game starts, kind of. But I want to talk about the politics now before we get into more about the game. So I'm not going to go too deep into what Kojima said, because I didn't want to accidentally spoil Death Stranding 2 for myself while researching the video. So I just researched something I knew about, because I've gone on media blackout for Death Stranding 2. I haven't even watched the trailers. Kojima says Death Stranding was inspired by Trump and Brexit. He spoke candidly to BBC Radio 1 about the current political climate, referencing President Donald Trump and Brexit as inspirations for the game's themes. Trump is building a wall and the UK is leaving the EU. In the game, we use bridges to connect things, but destroying those bridges can instantly turn them into walls, so bridges and walls are almost synonymous. That's one of the things I'd like players to think about in the game. The era of today is about individualism, important, and uses that as a means to examine the increased loneliness in our connected world. The attacks and violence seen online these days is out of control, so I designed this for people to take a step back by connecting, relearn how to be kind to others. After spending dozens of hours in the game, you will come back to reality in the end. When you do, I want you to use what you learned in the game. Connecting is one of those things. Kojima also spoke about his own battles with loneliness and how he hopes people will empathise with the messaging behind Death Stranding. I'm very prone to loneliness, and I think there are similar people around the world, especially gamers. Even though they're having fun with others outside, when they're alone and playing video games in their room, they don't feel like they fit into society or their community. So when those people play this game, they realise people like them exist all over the world. Knowing that even though I'm lonely, there are other people like me makes me feel at ease. So you have to remember, Death Stranding's debut trailer, I think, was in 2016. So when he talks about Trump and Brexit being these inspirations, he was probably writing the game in 2016. And although maybe to some of you who might be, let's say, on the younger side, if you're 18 or something, you weren't really paying attention to politics back then, it was the first break in the liberal facade where this insane polarization was sweeping across the UK and America in a way that hadn't been seen in a while. So it did feel like people were really at each other, especially on like the online social media battlegrounds, like really going at each other all the time. And just like, you know, it became an increasingly polarized time. Obviously, fast forward 9 years and it's even, you know, far, far worse. So it might even seem a bit like, not naive, but kind of funny to think about his game being inspired by those two things compared to what came afterwards. But that's like the political or the explicit political subtext. And you actually see that in the game, because the slogan of the game is "Make America Whole Again." And the premise in the story is, on the wishes of the dying president, who is Sam's adoptive mother, she wants Sam to come back to Bridges to help create something called the United Cities of America by connecting the whole of America to something called the chiral network, which is kind of like, I guess you can imagine it as some sort of substitute for the internet. It allows people to stay in contact. It allows people to like share loads of things so they can hook up their 3D printers and shit like that. So it is about like reconnecting people. Now, Sam as the player represents Kojima in many ways, because he's talking about loneliness, and gamers in many ways. But what I think he represents in kind of different ways is individualism and even neoliberalism. After the death of his wife and his child, Sam like left like America behind. He didn't want any part of it anymore. So he went out on his own to become basically like a self-employed Sigma male, where he would just do contracts on his own and he would work for various different companies and he wouldn't be a part of Bridges anymore. Now, what the game is about Sam's evolution to embracing community once again. Now, Sam doesn't even like people touching him. I forgot what the exact phrase for this is, but he doesn't even let people touch him. And he wants to go at it alone. Like, he's happier. He thinks he is happier alone. And to Kojima, I guess that could just be a commentary on Western society, how we forsake community in the favor of individual pursuits of things like profits and jobs and stuff like that. But very much it is targeting an individualist ideology in favor of a more collectivist ideology. Now, I've been thinking while thinking about this video, is the game more socialist or is the game more anarchist? I would say the narrative is more socialist. Like, it might think about like a communist world achieved through like socialist governments adapting situations, but the gameplay is, I think, pretty anarchist. But let's talk about that a bit more as well. So through the gameplay, Sam delivers to various different people around the world in the hopes that they will join the chiral network. So he will help them with various different jobs, and a lot of them will be really hostile to him. Like, they will not want any part of America for various different reasons, and it's your job, through being nice to them, through delivering them shit, to convince them to join and become part of the community. And what happens is you have this email function, so characters will email you across the game, telling you about their lives and telling you about how their lives are kind of improving now they've joined the United Cities of America. And essentially, Sam is connecting all these people to come together to survive the Death Stranding, and not only survive the Death Stranding, maybe thrive again once more. Like, humanities can thrive, and they'll be better working together rather than going at it alone like Sam does. Now, in the narrative side, what happens is Sam connects with all these people, he connects with all these characters, and by the end, he has enjoyed this so much, or it's developed him so much, he's actually willing to sacrifice himself for the United Cities of America, because his final mission in the game, spoilers, he has to go visit this person called Amelie on her beach, and there's a high chance he might not ever come back. But he does this to save the world, and he has like a very nice speech about how he has developed and grown, and how it was so hard for him to keep his emotions in check. He would rather go at it alone, and through doing these deliveries, through Connecting America, he realizes that community is the way forward for humanity.
Just so we're clear, if I want to stop the last stranding and come back in one piece, I need to go to her beach and talk her out of it. That about right?
Correct. As cliche as it sounds, you're our only hope. Though quite frankly, I doubt even you can change her mind.
If you can't make her see reason, you'll have to kill her. And if you kill her...
You'll save the world, but you'll be stranded outside of it. Forever.
I'll talk to her. Maybe she'll listen. But with the shape the world's in, it'll only be delaying the inevitable. Still, if it buys us time to try and build something better, a new lease on life, at least for a little bit, well, I can think of one woman who made the most of a chance like that. Nothing lasts forever, not even the world. But we gotta keep it going as long as we can, right? Patch the holes, change the parts, all that. So we can say we had a good run, that we lived.
Thought you didn't like having to handle things with care.
'Cause it was hard enough keeping my own shit together. Back when we met at the cave, the only thing I cared about was making it to the next sunrise. Sure as hell didn't care about America or the future. I was living a lie, hung up on past regrets. I was broken. But somewhere along the way, I started changing. I started meeting people that made me think that maybe it wasn't all bad. People that put their faith in tomorrow, and in me. That kept the lights on, and waited for hope to arrive. So I gotta deliver, for their sake.
Even if it means you never come back?
Fucked if I do, fucked if I don't, right? Take care of Lou.
I will.
And I really like this like evolution for him. Like, he's not like the most expressive character, it is Norman Reedus, but I loved his speech at the end, and I thought narratively that was an interesting character moment. Now, we'll hold it there for the narrative side for a bit, because I do think there is an underlying message in this game politically, not just about rejecting individualism. I think that is because of climate change. And I haven't seen too many people read into the game like this before, but I'll save that in favour of talking about the gameplay. So with Sam connecting all these people under this new government, the United Cities of America, which does have a new president by the end, you could read that more like saying in favour of like a socialist government, I would say. But in terms of like something less centralised, I think the player experience in the game is really interesting. And, you know, I would say it's just generally leftist, but you can put whatever label you want on it. So if you guys haven't played it or don't remember, or maybe didn't engage with it on this level as much, when you join people into the chiral network, like individual people living in their bunkers, it brings you into the chiral network for their area. And that means your map will then be filled with player creation. So it could be players laying out pathways for you, like maybe ladders and ropes to help you climb something easier. And there'll be a signpost by the ladder or rope with someone's PlayStation username, and you can tap like on your touchpad and it will like that thing, and that player will receive the notification that you liked it. And how many likes will show how many people have used this stuff. Or they can simply follow your path, like you can see their footsteps and you will know that is a safe passage for you to walk through. Or it can be as extensive as people building roads for you to drive on, and these roads would take a lot of construction. Sometimes someone might lay the foundation and you can build upon that, and you feel like you're building this community to build this safer world. And also, if you drop a delivery, someone can pick it up and deliver it for you. You can just shove it in a locker and you can say, like, can someone deliver this for me? There's these things called share lockers all around the world. You can put resources, vehicles, you can put all these things in a locker just for someone else to have. And the game encourages that, not even through money or much currency, through likes and for feeling like you did something nice. And that's the, like, kind of really unique thing about Death Stranding. It feels like there are so many people in this world with you and you're all working together to help each other. And it's such a nice feeling when you're like desperate for a resource or like a vehicle and you find a garage and someone's left the bike in there for you. And you're just like, this person, you can see their username. You could even I think you could even add them as a friend, but you can just like, and you can see all the likes you're getting. And there's not really any reward for it. You just see that, well, this person's been dedicated to Death Stranding and they have loads of likes because they help the community. And it's just like a very cool experience. It's like, you know, the interconnectivity of Dark Souls, but taken to like an even better level. And there isn't much trolling like Dark Souls, but even like you can put like little signposts up, warning of BTs. I always find them really helpful when you look and you see all the signs of the ghosts and you're like, okay, avoid that area. And I've made my own fair share of paths, and I'm just, you know, it's a nice feeling to think I've made a really good path here over this mountain, which is safe, and I hope someone else finds it. And I hope that gets imported to someone else's game. And what was a nice experience as well is, obviously I played this back in 2019 and early 2020 when loads of people were playing it, but I played the director's cut and I played it, you know, nearly 4 years after it came out, and there's still loads of people doing stuff. And that's what the nice thing is. And I've seen so many people online say, yeah, I just spent all my time building roads, and you just hope those roads go into other people's games. So it's just like so much of this community aspect. And again, there's no money involved. You don't pay people for stuff. You don't unlock loads of crazy shit. You normally do that from actually doing deliveries that are part of the main game. You're just helping each other. And like I said, you could slap whatever label you want on it, but it's just a very nice way for a community to work together without any motivation apart from to help each other. And that's just like a nice message that it tells through the gameplay itself, which obviously, you know, underscores the narrative, but it's just a very unique mechanic, which I'm interested to see how they expand in Death Stranding 2, because I saw that the tagline was, should we have connected? And I saw a little quote of Kojima saying, maybe I thought connection wasn't so good. So we'll see what the actual message of the next game is. But now I want to talk about the final point, which I haven't seen too many people talk about. So the main threat in Death Stranding isn't actually the ghosts and the rain and stuff. It's actually the fact that there is this person in the game who is designed to be the new extinction of humanity. So the game talks a lot about the 5 extinctions on planet Earth that have happened across millions and millions of years. And this person called Amelie, what she is something called an extinction entity. And that means her goal is to bring in the new extinction. And that means pretty much wiping out most of life on planet Earth. But she's saying that this is what needs to happen. And this is what happened before in the past with other extinction entities. And when Sam goes on his mission that he might not come back from, it's because he wants to stop her from doing that. And to stop her to give humanity a chance, however long it will be. And she says to him, when she knows she's going to not go through with this, she says, it could be 10 years or it could be 200,000, but the next extinction is happening. Now, when I'm reading all the subtext about individualism and community aspect and talking about coming together to make America whole, I wasn't just reading it in terms of the division. I was thinking that Kojima's message, or maybe it's not his message, but I read into it, is that we all need to come together because there is something looming in the background. And it's not the extinction entity, Amelie, who also was the president. It's because there is an extinction level event coming, and that is the climate of the Earth not being habitable for a lot of humanity in the coming centuries. And how are we going to stop this? We have to come together. We have to work together. And that's why I get so depressed a lot of the time with, massive wars or even just like hostility, like with Iran. We label groups rogue states. So we don't even allow them to come into the international community. But what needs to happen is all countries need to come together. We all have to come together despite our differences and work on how are we going to stop climate change? Because it is going to destroy our planet if we keep going the way we're going. That's why it complements the individualism message nicely, because neoliberal capitalism and neoliberalism and consumer capitalism are what is destroying our planet, along with militarism as well, all things Kojima hates. So if we don't come together, if we don't reject individualism, and if we don't pursue collectivism, what's going to happen is what's going to happen in Death Stranding. There's going to be probably not an extinction level event in terms of what's been in the past, but something that is going to ensure that humanity cannot survive as it is now, and our numbers are going to increasingly be limited by the weather. And you look up, type in now, safest places to be for climate change. A lot of the world won't be able to be inhabited like it is now. And you see places like England, Ireland, New Zealand, these places will be coveted. So we're going to look at crazy refugee crises. And sadly, I know what's going to happen is because of capitalism, and we don't listen to people like myself or Kojima, we're not going to be able to fix climate change, and it is going to have these massive impacts, and it is going to be too late because we're seeing what capitalism is doing to us and what neoliberalism has done to us. It pits us all against each other, and we can't come together either as communities within nations or between nation states to save ourselves. We're just not going to do that. And the one thing that is also in the game is Higgs's character. What he represents is kind of, I don't know what philosophy you would attribute to him, but him and Amelie are kind of the mind of, why wait? Let's get it over with. Let's end humanity right now. Let's have the extinction. And I guess that's a mindset, I wouldn't say it's prevalent, but it's kind of like that mindset of who the fuck cares what happens to humanity? That apathy of maybe we even deserve it if we think of humanity in a certain way. It is an interesting thing that they both have, but clearly through Sam Porter-Bridges, the message of the game is fight together and fight against the extinction. And even if it only buys you a bit of time, it's worth the struggle. That is the underlying message of Sam Porter-Bridges at the end. And that's what he realizes through his adventure across America. And that's what Death Stranding is saying. It's saying, forsake individualism and build community to save us. And it is tackling these bigger questions and stuff. I wouldn't say it's as, I wouldn't call it nuanced, but as detailed as Metal Gear Solid in that specifically he focuses on very specific things. It's talking about this bigger goal of community building. So that is my read of Death Stranding. Now, the thing is, like I said, because I didn't want to spoil Death Stranding 2, I know Kojima has spoken a lot about Death Stranding 1 in podcasts and interviews. I didn't want to listen to them. I didn't want to read them because I didn't want to spoil stuff, and I didn't want to accidentally see shit about Death Stranding 2 when looking for this. But yeah, we see what the politics of Death Stranding are. It was motivated by seeing the polarization during the EU referendum and Trump and stuff like that, and seeing how people would just turn against each other in very, very hostile ways. But also, I think his general critique of neoliberalism and capitalism that has been present in the Metal Gear Solid games comes over to this, but just looks at it in a broader scope of, like I said, extinction and what will happen if humans don't come together. You had the subtext about loneliness, of course, and gamers, but I do think the game mechanics are a benefit to the political message of the games. And you do have that Kojima skepticism of like the US government, because what was nice to see is, and especially remember upon playing it again, yeah, Kojima doesn't really like the US government, and it's funny that even a post-Death Stranding US government is still filled with really shady shit, and that's obviously shown through Mads Mikkelsen's character and Sam's own origin story as a BB as well. Yeah, that is it for the video. Enjoyed talking about that. Let me know what you guys think of Death Stranding. Again, if this gets over 10k views, pretty low for my channel, but probably pretty high for this topic, I will make a Death Stranding 2 politics video, and I promise I'll do it this year. Let me know what you guys think about that. Also, one more message. Sorry, Kojima, your merch store's hat is bad. Like, I've barely ever worn this because it fits like crap, and this bit is way too big. But that's it for the video. Let me know what you guys think, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.